So for the last few weeks, we've been talking about heroes. Because, I don't know, heroes are kind of cool. I like superheroes. There's always a good story. And when you start talking about superheroes, one of the most important things about superheroes are their origin story. Because, when we start talking about superheroes, usually we want to jump to what are their superpowers, what's their secret identity, what's all this stuff about what they're doing now. And those are all good and important things. But those are all explanations of how. How do they fight crime? How do they protect people? But the origin story is important because it doesn't only tell us how, but it tells us why. Take Spider-Man, for example. Why does Spider-Man fight crime? Well, because his Uncle Ben told him with great power comes great responsibility, but there's more to it than that. Because if you look at his origin story, Uncle Ben told him that, but he didn't listen. And then as a result, his Uncle Ben died. And so Peter carries that weight that when he didn't act, something bad happened. And so he carries that forward, and that's why he continues to help. That's why he continues to serve. Likewise, Batman. We know that he goes through the streets of Gotham at night, issuing vigilante justice to drug dealers and crime lords. But why? Well, because when he was a young boy, his parents were robbed and murdered in the streets of Gotham at night, and he vowed that he would not let that happen to anyone else. And so he uses all of his technology, he uses all of his gadgets, his detective skills, and all these things, all of his vast wealth, to protect other people, so that no other child has to go through what he had to go through. And as we look at these stories, these origin stories, we get those really good altruistic ones where, I just want to help and I just want to do good things. But not all heroes do it for good reasons. Sometimes they're for selfish reasons. And I think of the Guardians of the Galaxy. And in that movie, they're talking about, what they need to do and how they need to do it. And I could explain it all to you, but I'll just play a video clip to explain what's going on.
How could I think Tavon could contain whatever was within the orb?
What do you still have it for?
Well, what are we going to do, leave it in there?
I can't believe you had that in your purse.
It's not a purse, it's a knapsack.
You have to bring this to the Nova Corps. There's a chance they can contain it.
Are you kidding me? We're wanted by the Nova Corps. Just give it to Ronan.
So he can destroy the galaxy?
What are you, some saint all of a sudden? What has the galaxy ever done for you? Why would you want to save it?
Because I'm one of the idiots who lives in it.
Peter, listen to me.
Sometimes they do the right thing for the right reason. Sometimes they do the right thing because, they just want to live too. But whether it's for selfish reasons or altruistic reasons, every hero, they help for the same reason. Because they have skin in the game. They have a vested interest. Batman wants to make sure that nobody else goes through what he went through. Peter Quill wants to save his own skin, but it's still skin in the game. And the same is true in our journey. As we are becoming heroes, as we are blessing our community and serving others, if we want to be effective, if we want to help others, we do it best when we have skin in the game, when we have a vested interest in helping other people. We've been looking at the story of the Good Samaritan. And a couple weeks ago, we were contrasting the actions of the priest and the Levite in this parable as they walked by this injured man in need and the Good Samaritan who stopped and helped. And we said it was partly because he had compassionate eyes. He saw what was going on and took action. We find that in Luke chapter 10, verse 33. It says, "But a Samaritan on his journey came up to him, and when he saw the man, he had compassion." Now, as we look at that, we could speculate all the reasons why. Why did this man have compassion? And it all comes back to he had skin in the game. We don't know what exactly caused him to act. Maybe he had been in that exact same situation. Maybe he had been the victim. Maybe he had been hurt and somebody helped him, and so he's repaying. Maybe it was a loved one that had been hurt. Maybe his parents just taught him when he was young. Maybe he was one of the bandits at a previous time, and now he's trying to atone for all the bad things that he has done. We don't know why he did it, but we do know what he did. As we look forward and continue in his story, it says he went over to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on olive oil and wine. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, "Take care of him. When I come back, I'll reimburse you for whatever extra you spend." See, these are the steps that were taken. And we can ask the question, how do we get there? How do we get from where we are? How do we develop these compassionate eyes? How do we put skin in the game? How do we get a vested interest in the needs of the community around us? And I think that as we look at the steps that were taken by this Samaritan, we begin to see how we must act and what we must do in order to go and do likewise. And the first step that he took seems really simple, but he stopped and he moved toward the man in need. And this is often the very first hurdle that we have to overcome. Moving from inaction to action. And we've seen people in need. We've acknowledged that they are in need. And many times, we don't do anything. And we have lots of reasons. We can justify it to ourselves, but really a lot of it comes down to, first and foremost, we don't feel qualified. Well, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a mechanic. I can't help in that situation. I'm going to be more in the way than I am going to be a help. And maybe we think, well, somebody else is going to come along. Somebody else is going to help, and they are going to be much more helpful than I am. And so we don't even cross that first hurdle. We don't move toward the person in need. Imagine the story if that was what was going through the Samaritan's mind. As he walked down this road and he saw this injured man, thinking, I don't have the expertise. I don't know what to do. I can't help and take care of all that he needs. So I'm not going to stop. This is a road that is commonly traveled by priests and Levites, and they are much more capable of helping this man in need. So I'm going to assume that somebody, one of those guys, is going to be coming along down the road in a short while, and so I'm just going to pass by. We know how that would turn out. This man wouldn't have survived. But that's not the only reason. Many times we don't act because we don't feel qualified, but sometimes, I think especially in our society today, we don't want to intrude. We're very much about our personal space, our private affairs and our private matters. And many times we see a problem. We see what's going on, but we don't stop and help because, we're waiting for permission, I guess. I've been guilty of this. Where I see a problem going on and, I don't want to impose. I don't want to insert myself into somebody else's private business, and so I don't act. And really, when it comes down to it, our reason for not acting in those situations, it's a fear of rejection. I don't want to put myself out there and offer to help only to be rejected and told, no, stay out of our business. I don't want to be told no, so I just don't help. I don't offer my assistance, because if I don't offer my assistance, then I can't be rejected. We don't like being rejected. And as the church, we do that in different ways. Many times in the church, we'll put out a blanket. If you're discouraged and you need encouragement, Well, then come to church on Thursday night and we will give encouragement to anyone who is discouraged. How many discouraged people do you really think are going to come on Thursday night to get encouragement? Nobody. That's not how it works. They're not going to step out and come and say, you know what, I'm really feeling discouraged. Ministry doesn't happen on a schedule like that. When you see that need, most of the time, people aren't going to ask for help. We're a proud people in America. We like to take care of ourselves. And so, we don't ask for help. If we're going to help people, if we're really going to be heroes, what a hero does, heroes relocate to be close to those who are in need, whether they ask for it or not. You don't see Batman stopping and saying, hey, can I help you? Before he assists somebody. Hey, this guy's robbing you. Do you really want me to stop him? No. When there is a need, he stops what he's doing and he gets close to the victims. He gets close to those who are in need so that he can help them. That's what this Samaritan did. He stopped what he was doing and he moved closer to the victim, to the person in need, so that he could help. And then he looked for the wounds that he could heal. And again, this is one that we struggle with because so often we do the opposite. It goes back to step one and why we don't act. Rather than looking for the things that we can do, we look at all the things that we can't do. Well, I can't do that and I can't do that, so I'm just not going to help at all. When I was in Army, in the basic training, they taught us a whole bunch of stuff about being soldiers. They taught us everything we needed to know from maintaining weapons to setting up tactical positions to helping out fellow soldiers. And one of the things that they taught us, it was a mnemonic device. It was really bad boys should find better habits. And what this did was it taught us all the things that we needed to do when we came upon a soldier who was down, who was injured. This is what we needed to check. Are they responsive? Are they breathing? Are they bleeding? And all the way down the line, all these things so that we can help them in their immediate needs. Now, certainly, in a time of war, there are combat medics. There are people who can help. There are doctors and there are surgeons and there are people who could do a lot more, who could do more to save this person's life. But if we came to the situation, we said, well, I'm not a doctor. I can't perform surgery on this guy. But I can. I can check if he's responsive. I can check if he's breathing. I can check if he's bleeding. And I can take care of these things. And so many times we look at these small things and we think, I'm not taking care of the whole problem. So why even try at all? But the reality is, those little things, as we do those little things, I mean, in the matter of soldiers, I mean, it can be the difference between life and death. Getting that immediate care, even those little things where you just stop the bleeding, that's it. Even if you don't take care of the whole wound. The same is true for us. As we're looking to help other people, so many times we don't do anything because we can't do everything. Each of us has our limits. But when we acknowledge our limits and we stay within that scope. I mean, the Samaritan, he wasn't a doctor to our knowledge. He couldn't heal everything, every problem this man had, but I mean, he could bandage some wounds. He at least knew the basics of keeping a wound clean. He was able to get the man into town. You can't do everything. But don't let that prevent you from doing something. And then, when you've done all that you can, that's when you get additional help. We see that with the Good Samaritan. He addressed the needs. He addressed the immediate needs and took care of what he could. And then he asked for help from the innkeeper. So many times we look and we see, well, this person's having car trouble. Well, I'm not a mechanic. I can't help them out. I don't even know where to start. But I'm sure you know somebody who knows something about cars. Or you come across a single mother who needs childcare, and I mean, you can't, you work, you don't have time, you don't have the temperament to take care of their kids. But I'm sure you know somebody. You have connections. You know people who can do these sort of things. You can ask for help. Healing is a team effort. What you may not be able to do, somebody else can. And many times, your actions, your willingness to step toward those in need, that's the catalyst for getting other people involved, for getting other people who have other skills to help so that the whole need can be taken care of. Because that's what we're doing. That's what heroes do. We take care of other people's needs. We serve other people. But in this line, we also have to keep in mind that healing requires sacrifice. It's not a zero-sum game. This Samaritan, he gave up his time. We don't know, was he heading home? Was he heading to work? We don't know what he was doing, but we know that he took time out of his day. Maybe it was time with his family. Maybe it was time that he should be working. He used his own oil. He used his own bandages. He used his own money. He sacrificed to help this other man. Because that's what heroes do. We went over that last week as we were looking at the life of Jesus and how Jesus gave of himself, how Jesus sacrificed himself. As Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. And we saw that as we went through the life of Jesus and his ministry here on earth, and how Jesus, he gave of his time to other people. He gave of his resources to other people to heal and to take care of them, to teach them. And ultimately, he gave his life as a sacrifice to save mankind. That's what we're seeing here with the Good Samaritan. It's the same thing, just on a smaller scale. He is giving up of himself. He is sacrificing. So many times we think that it's a zero-sum game. Well, I'm going to help this person, and then later when I'm in need, they're going to help me in return. And so I scratch your back, you scratch my back, and it all works out. But healing others, it's not a zero-sum. It's not a I scratch your back, I help you now, you help me later. Helping others is a one-sided transaction. I help you, period. I don't expect anything in return. I'm not expecting you to help me out later. If you do, great, that'd be awesome. But my helping you, my healing of you, it's not conditional on you even saying thank you. I am helping you because Jesus said to go and do likewise. Notice the Samaritan, he didn't tell the innkeeper, hey, when this guy wakes up, just keep an itemized bill and just slide it under his door when he's done. I'm going to put all the burden on him to be healed. No, he said, I will reimburse you. Take care of this man, and whatever expenses it costs, whatever sacrifice needs to be made, I will do it. I will give. Because that's what heroes do. But it's also important, as we're seeking to bless our community, as we're seeking to help those who are in need, you have to know your limits. Because there is only so much that you can do. As we look at this story, it's easy to look at the Samaritan and say, well, he wrote a blank check. He said, hey, innkeeper, whatever it costs, blank check, I will pay anything. And he did. But what was the reason? Maybe this guy was really rich. Maybe he had unlimited income and all the money that he could spend, but he had his limits. That's why he left. He said, when I come back, He couldn't stay forever. He had obligations. Maybe it was to his family. Maybe it was business. He had his limitations. And he couldn't go beyond his limitations. It would be detrimental. That's when he started leaning on other people. He had other obligations. He could only give so much. He had limits on his time. And many times I think we forget that. We are finite beings. We can only give so much. We only have so much time. We have so much money, so much that we can give. And while we praise people who give sacrificially, we have to be mindful that we can only give so much. This is what Paul was telling Timothy. In 1 Timothy chapter 5, he said, "But if anyone does not provide for his own family, especially his own household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." You have your limits. Each of us only has so much that we can give, but that's not an excuse to be inactive. That's not an excuse to do nothing. If anything, it reinforces what we've been saying this whole time. That if we're going to help other people, if we're going to bless our community, if we're going to be heroes and go and do likewise, then caring for others is best done in community. Sure, it may start with a single person. It may start with you seeing a need and being willing to step towards it, to stop what you're doing and move toward the person in need. And then providing what help you can within your limited capacity and asking others for help in addition to that. Sharing that burden. But you were never meant to do it alone. You were never meant to go beyond your abilities. But we've all been called to work together, to serve this community, to bless those around us, to care for its needs, to go and do likewise. And we do that in many different ways. I know that there are people in this church that are very, very generous with their time and their skill set and even their money. There are times when we come together. We've been doing the family movie nights at church, and this is, again, it's an opportunity to just bless our community, to give to those in need, to give parents, to give a little fun, to give a little break, to just be Jesus and make those connections so that we can see the needs, so that we can have our eyes open to what's going on in our community. We have the block party that I announced earlier. Again, just an opportunity to connect with this community, to just give back. How many people do you know that they need a vacation? They need a break. They need just a fun afternoon where they don't have to worry about lunch. They don't have to worry about this, that, or whatever. It's just a good time. And then we have our donation box where we're blessing a family within our community. Each one of us can only do so much. Each one of us is limited in how we can help. But when we come together, we can move mountains. We can change people's lives. I may not have the skill set to help them, but you do. And as you come across things that you can't handle, maybe it's lack of skill, maybe it's lack of resources, maybe it's lack of time. Then I lean on you and you lean on me. And as we do that together, well, then our community is blessed. As Jesus said, let your good works shine before men, that they may see your good works and praise your Father in heaven. We've been given a mission to help other people, to share the love of Jesus, to be a hero in some terms. And sure, Batman goes off and does stuff on his own. Spider-Man goes off and does stuff on his own. But when the problem gets too big, Spider-Man calls in the Avengers. When Batman is in above his head, he's not going to admit it, but that's when he calls the Justice League. We are all in this together, and yes, you can help and you can bless. But as a community, we are stronger together because caring for others is best done in community when we have skin in the game and we know what's going on. We have a vested interest. Lord Jesus, I pray that as we wrap up this sermon series, that it's not something that, well, that was a good time to think about what we should do, but God, may it be the catalyst to spur us to action, to take seriously this call to go and do likewise, to be of help, to be of aid to those within our community, not expecting I scratch your back, you scratch mine, but expecting nothing in return. Just showing the love of Jesus and giving to those who are in need, whether we think they deserve it or not. So God, I pray that you would go before us, that you would bless our endeavors, that you would intersect our paths with those who are in need, that we could, as the Samaritan, draw near to them, help them in whatever way we can, and to bring the community along to help one another. God, help us to stay within our limits, not neglecting our family and our other responsibilities, but to still give and to help. God, go with us this week. Open our eyes. Give us compassionate eyes to see what's going on around us, to see the needs that are represented within our circles, that we may go and do likewise, that we may be a blessing to our community. And we give you the praise for all that is done and all that is going to be done in your holy and precious name. Amen. God bless you guys. I love you, and we'll see you next week.